Walk through any local market here, and you immediately hit a wall of economic friction. For millions of people navigating these stalls, daily survival is a tightrope walk of stretchable budgets and shrinking purchasing power. The deepest irony is what is actually sitting on these market tables. You are standing in a historically agrarian country, surrounded by fertile land, yet even the most basic staples, like simple vegetables, have to be shipped in from overseas. When a nation stops growing its own food and starts buying it from abroad, every single onion or cabbage absorbs the cost of global freight, fuel surcharges, and customs fees. Those layered markups create a baseline cost of living that mathematically outpaces average local wages. So, how does an agricultural nation end up paying a premium for its own produce? Why are everyday prices artificially inflated in a country where the majority of the population has so little capital to spare? The exorbitant price tag attached to basic survival here is not a random market fluctuation or a string of bad harvest years. It is the downstream, deliberate result of a specific legal blueprint. Decades ago, the country effectively turned its back on local manufacturing and large-scale agricultural production. The economic engine shifted almost entirely away from creating things, moving instead toward a model of relentless consumption. When you hollow out your domestic supply chains, you create a massive vacuum. The state becomes utterly reliant on foreign imports to fill it, instantly anchoring the national economy to global price spikes and shipping bottlenecks. In standard economic models, this kind of glaring domestic vacuum triggers an immediate correction. Foreign investors see the demand, flood the market with capital, build local factories, and establish public-private partnerships to rebuild the capacity. But that natural correction never happens here. The capital sits on the sidelines, not because there isn't money to be made, but because a strict legal barrier forbids it from entering. That barrier is codified deep within the nation's post-EDSA constitution. It is a set of provisions commonly referred to as the Filipino First mandate. The original architecture of this policy was built on a well-intentioned, deeply patriotic ideology. The goal was to shield fragile local industries from massive multinational corporations and ensure the wealth generated within the borders stayed in the hands of citizens. This animated flowchart shows the mechanical flaw in that ideology. By rigidly capping the percentage of foreign equity allowed in domestic businesses, the policy effectively chokes off the heavy outside capital required to fund vital public-private partnerships. Building new maritime ports, modernizing an electrical grid, establishing high-yield supply chains requires hundreds of billions of dollars. Without foreign-backed infrastructure projects to share that immense financial load, the domestic capacity simply stagnates. A foundational document designed to secure the nation's independence inadvertently starved it of the critical infrastructure it desperately needed to compete in the modern era. So what happens to a captive market of over 100 million people when you constitutionally lock out international competition? The true victors of the Filipino First policy emerged quickly. A small, entrenched cartel of local oligarchs swooped in to capture the uncompetitive landscape, buying up vital sectors without having to innovate or lower prices. You can see the most damaging example of this monopolization overhead. The energy sector is tightly controlled by these elite families, resulting in aging infrastructure, frequent outages, and highly inefficient power distribution. The ultimate institutional irony is that the government's hands are tied. They are legally bound by their own constitution to favor these local monopolies, turning away cheaper, more efficient foreign energy alternatives. A constitutional framework meant to protect the common citizen resulted in a legal system that favors the local energy companies owned by a handful of elite families. That localized control of the power grid dictates the cost of doing business across the entire country. Because there is zero foreign competition to drive down prices, commercial electricity rates are artificially capped at an extreme premium. This diagram shows the cascading effect on the broader economy. High monopoly energy rates mean it is too expensive to build local factories. No factories means a near-total reliance on imports, which mathematically drives up the basic cost of living. This brings us right back to those crowded market stalls. The reason those imported vegetables carry such a punishing price tag is that the entire domestic supply chain has been priced out of existence by the power monopolies overhead. This systemic reliance on imports drains the present and blocks the future. Even modern necessities like solar energy parts are prohibitively expensive for the average citizen because every single component must be imported at a markup. The Filipino First mandate successfully built an economic fortress that failed to keep foreign economic threats out, but successfully locked its own citizens in. True national protection requires open competition and continuous investment. Policies that mandate isolationism in the name of patriotism ultimately succeed only in breeding local oligarchy and widespread, inescapable poverty.